The 2023 MLB postseason has just kicked off, and the Minnesota Twins are looking unstoppable. You see, the Twins had a wildcard matchup against the 6th-seeded Toronto Blue Jays this past week, and although Toronto may have been the 6th seed and barely made the playoffs, they did have 2 more wins than the Minnesota Twins, and thanks to that very easy division that the Minnesota Twins are playing in. I mean, the NL Central was not good this year, and there had to be someone that rise to the top eventually. That was this year's Minnesota Twins. So there was a lot of doubt, a lot of speculation about how these Twins would perform against good teams like the Blue Jays. And, I mean, after 2 games, we know the answer to that. I guess the AL East wasn't the juggernaut of a division that it seemed to be, because although 3 teams did make the playoffs from that division, 2 of them got bounced out immediately. Both the Rays and the Blue Jays got swept. Boston, New York didn't make the playoffs. And the only team left is the Baltimore Orioles, who were projected to miss the playoffs entirely heading into the season. And if the Orioles lose and lose badly next round, oh my god, the AL East is full of frauds. Now, let's circle back to the Minnesota Twins here, who I believe one of their biggest strengths heading into this postseason was their starting pitching rotation. In fact, their starting pitchers were one of the biggest reasons they were able to sweep the Blue Jays in 2 games. I mean, Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray both respectively had fantastic starts. Both pitched around 5 innings and got the job done. Gave up a combined 1 earned run between the 2. So yeah, I mean, their starting pitching was very strong against Toronto. And this is nothing new because the entire pitching staff has been playing very well almost the whole season. I mean, we take a look here at their ace, Pablo Lopez, who did take the mound game 1 respectively, and he got 32 starts throughout the year. He even threw for 1 complete game, and that's probably why he has the most innings pitched out of the entire ball club. He went 194 innings this year, which is a ton, especially in this new baseball era where most starting pitchers can't make it 7 or 8 innings without the manager coming in and benching them. And following up Pablo is probably one of my favorite players on the entire team in Sonny Gray, because I'm an A's fan. He was one of the first pitchers I saw, one of the first great pitchers I saw ever play the game of baseball. Sonny Gray is amazing, and the fact that he's doing well later into his career with Minnesota is even better. I mean, this man had the lowest ERA out of the starting pitchers at 2.79. It wasn't close. He had about 8 wins on the season, and again, another pitcher who had a lot of innings pitched for the Minnesota Twins, about 184. And talk about reliable, because both Sonny Gray and Pablo Lopez started 32 games for the Minnesota Twins, which adds up to like 64 starts for the team. That's 40% of the season, where the Minnesota Twins went into a game with one of those 2 guys being the starting pitcher. That was huge. That was a big reason why the Twins were able to conquer the NL Central in the first place. And the other 3 guys in the rotation, 2 of them are homegrown talents, and all 3 of them have been playing pretty well. You see, both Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober have spent their entire 3-year career together in the majors playing for the Minnesota Twins. Both 27 years old, came up at about the same time, and now they're in the starting pitching staff for the Twins. You see, Joe Ryan went out. He got 11 wins for the team. His ERA wasn't as great as the other 2, but he did have a complete game throughout the season. He had 1 complete game, so shout out Joe Ryan. With that shutout too, he did have a shutout, fantastic. And then if we take a look at a guy like Bailey Ober, who has been improving dramatically over these past 3 seasons with the Twins, he's gone out, he's contributed 8 wins to the squad so far this season. Who knows what he'll do in the playoffs? I know that he will be pitching against the Houston Astros eventually, right? They're gonna have to put him in. He has a lower ERA than some of the other guys at about 3.43. And let's not forget to mention that he has the lowest whip out of all of the starting pitchers on the Minnesota Twins. So, there's Bailey Ober for you. And last but certainly not least, we've got the oldest guy in the rotation, coming in at about the age of 35 years old, in Kenta Maeda. Now, Kenta Maeda may be having one of the worst seasons out of the starting pitchers, with his ERA being a little up there and him having more losses than wins on the season. But if you take into account the fact that this guy missed the entire 2022 season due to injury, you'd consider it a pretty good bounce back year for the 35-year-old. And let's not forget the man that Kenta Maeda was in his prime, which I would argue would have to be the 2020 season with the Minnesota Twins. That was his first year with the Twins. Sure, it was cut down due to COVID, so the stats are a bit skewed, but he did start 11 games for the Twins, was Cy Young runner-up. I'm sure he lost to Shane Bieber, so he was second place in Cy Young Award voting, which sucks for him. But on the upside, the Twins played very well when he pitched. He went out, got a 2.70 ERA, won about 6 games, and the Twins only lost 1 game that Maeda started the entire year. So you got that. But that's enough about the pitching side for the Minnesota Twins. I want to get into the hitting and fielding aspects for them. And I'd say one of the big reasons the Twins had such a good year this year was because they were able to retain a superstar like Carlos Correa, who I know played last year for the Twins, but this year was his free agent year. And oh my god, did we think he was going to the Giants? I mean, there was a chance he was going to the Giants. That didn't work out. That fell through. Ends up back on the Twins, and that was probably the best thing that could have happened for him. Now, sure, some might say that Carlos Correa is great for the team, but his batting average, his on-base percentage, his slugging, his OPS is all down from last season. And I'm not going to argue with that because it's true, but he was a good glue guy for the team. He played 136 games, up there career-wise for him. Some seasons he'll play less than 100, so the fact that they got 136 out of him was huge. But the reason they brought him on is because of the winning culture he brings. When you think of Carlos Correa, your mind automatically goes to the Houston Astros and that superpower, that juggernaut of a squad they had throughout all of the late 2010s and that they continue to have. And so Carlos Correa is associated with success. He's had a few all-star seasons. He's been in running for MVP here and there. And so when the Minnesota Twins go into the playoffs, they missed it the last 2 seasons. Now they're in the playoffs. They have someone who knows what it's like to reach the top. That's what the veteran presence is there for. Plus, he can ball still. But if you prefer a guy who gets on base a ton, hits the ball really well, then you probably know about their second baseman, Edouard Julien. Now, Edouard Julien has played over 100 games for the squad so far this season. He's been very well, probably one of the better batters on the team for the Twins all year long. For guys who played over 100 games, he's got the highest OPS. His slugging is, I want to say, number 2. His on-base percentage is higher than any other starter on the team right now, and that's what matters, right? Batting average 263, but whatever. Everything else about Julien screams a great hitter, someone who's going to get on base for you. That's really some of the best parts about the Twins. I'm sure I missed a few key guys who I forgot to mention. If I did, leave it in the comments down below who you think deserves, all the praise, some glory. Rocco Baldelli, the general manager for the Minnesota Twins, awesome dude. Cool name. Baldelli, that's a baller name. Come on, let's keep it a buck. That's a cool name. So if there's anybody else that I forgot to talk about for the Minnesota Twins, leave it in the comments below. But I watched this wildcard game versus the Blue Jays. It was hype. It was awesome. I would love to see more of this team as the playoffs go on. Hopefully Carlos Correa and the gang can push past his former team in the Houston Astros. And if they're able to do that, then there's probably no other team in the league that'll stop them. They're red hot right now. And the best thing about baseball is that 162 games no longer matter. It's all about being hot at the right time, and that's exactly what the Minnesota Twins are doing. That's about it for this video. Catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.